Welcome back, Coach. How you doing, buddy?
Dude, I'm doing solid, man. I'm happy to be here. It's you know, I had, like I was telling you before, I had a few beard sickles this morning. Been a little spoiled with the what I would call warmer than warmer than normal winter temps. It's been just like perfect outdoor, like pretty much everything. I mean, even Hayden's like, like running, like playing outside on, like he's still riding his bike to school and, full on like shorts and t-shirt the other day. It's freaking January. And then yesterday, I think it's more of a reality check. Got up this morning and make sure I did a little bit longer of an extended warm up before my run intervals. And yeah, I got done. I was like wiping like I had obviously had gloves on. I was wiping my face, like one of my last intervals, and like white stuff was on. And I was like, oop, got the beard sickles, man, and we're back.
Nice.
But yeah, it's winter, as it should be. It's January 15th, the year 2026. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 901.
901.
901.
Yeah.
I feel like 901 has to be a solid area code.
Oh, I think it
This
is.
has that presence about it. Let's
Yeah.
check it out real quick. 901 area code.
California.
Oh, that's Memphis. Never mind.
Oh, I knew it was something familiar.
Maybe one of the, maybe one, I know it did sound familiar. It was like maybe one of the weaker area codes on the planet. But no,
Come on,
no,
John Morant.
I said John Morant. Yeah, class act right there, old John Morant. No, week is good. Happy to be here. I know you're traveling. You're out of pocket. Your usual lakeside estate this week. How's the traveling or being out of your usual routine? How's that affecting your training?
A little bit, but I mean, I've been really working on trying to be consistent, but that always is a challenge. I mean, you mentioned hotels last week, and it's always sort of like, how do you stay in your groove? I mean, it's easy to kind of like when there's no interruptions and no distractions to kind of build a kind of consistency, but the minute you get out of that, that's when the real challenge. It's sort of like you can study in a classroom and then you get into a boardroom and you learned all that stuff, but how do you react when somebody's an asshole or something?
Right.
It's like, that's the challenge in life really, is you can kind of have it down. It's like a race, and it's like you can be great in training and then get to race day and just go to, complete hell. Or you can, like, you know what I mean?
Complete hell. Yeah, thanks for the TED Talk today, Mike. Yeah, you're gonna go to complete hell.
You know what I'm saying? No, I feel like that's the same thing.
I do.
It's a controlled environment versus the reality of.
It is. And I mean, and again, like, I think this is actually like one of the busiest years, like, or not years, but like parts of the year for people. Like, yes, as triathletes, like an endurance athletes, generally speaking, the meat of your racing season is, maybe into May towards, mid-September. Obviously, you've got, some races in October, November. But that's kind of like the meat of the season. Yeah, you got summer, but it does seem like you've got more hours, whether you've got kids or not. You got, summer with kids out. It does seem like it's a little more flexible. It's definitely busier, but I feel like you can get more hours into the day. This time of year, and I hear it all the time from out there, it just feels very condensed. There's a lot of things, even from like a professional, perspective, as an athlete, you're trying to kickstart things, get back in a routine. This again, even triathlete or not, like whatever your sport is, people are always trying to find a new routine and get back in it. And, it does build strength. That was a comment one of my athletes made. He was like, yeah, I'm starting to feel, I'm getting back in my routine. I'm starting to gain more confidence. And I was like, that's like, to me, that's the ticket. Like you establish some habits, those habits lead to a routine, and that routine builds confidence. And I think a lot of people try to go in reverse. They're like, well, I just need to get some confidence back up. Like, I think I shared this, like, this has been freaking forever, 7 or 8 years. I was talking to my cousin who was trying to get back in the gym. She's like, yeah, I feel like I really got to get in shape before I join. And I was like,
that's always the thing.
I was like, right? It's like,
that's
I
true.
want to look good when I come. I mean, it's
that's a microcosm of
right?
a lot of
But
things.
it is, right? It's like, I want to, feel fit before I go to like one of these classes. I'm like, that's kind of like not the point. Like, if you want to go to a gym, like you go there to try to like get fit. You don't have to like reach a certain level, because then you're always going to convince yourself, right, you're not fit enough. And even when you get fit, you're like, man, maybe let's get a little more fit, right? It's the same goes for triathletes. And I mean, I've been, guilty of this before. Is like, you start to get fit and then you're like, maybe I need to get a little fitter until I race. Like, you want to remove any chance of a loss, or any chance of like not meeting an expectation. So there's always going to be that that one more week or that one more month, or the same thing like when people put things off, right? Next Monday is just, it's wide open. Like it's gonna be a smooth. I'm like, when the fuck did you be able to predict the future? Because as far as I can tell, none of us have any control. We have no idea what's gonna bring. I mean, ask half the athletes that I work with. They had grand plans for January, and they've already been punched in the gut. Like there is no perfect time. So yes, you might want to build confidence, and there's always an argument of, you know, mood follows movement, or does movement follow mood? And I tend to think that movement follows mood. Like if you're in a good spot, like you can want to move. But then for a lot of people, and that might work for one part of the population, but a lot of times like just moving, like kind of going back to what I talked about on Tuesday, I did not want to move Tuesday morning.
Right.
Like I did not feel like I talked about. I was in the tank recovery wise, like the lowest recovery I've had in over 12 months. And I was feeling kind of groggy. I wasn't really into it. I feel like I put out, decent, I'll give myself a 5.5 on the podcast scale, and then put in a 3-hour training day in the red and felt so much better. And what my next day was? Back in the green. What today was? Even higher. Like, so movement is important, but again, like I think we want that confidence so much, but we don't understand where it comes from. And it comes from, identifying those habits that we know are repeatable, right? Which isn't something tied, just like you're talking about, you're away from your home and your kind of usual layout. And even if there's still things that are accessible, it's still not your routine, right? It's like going to, going to a different city and walking in the grocery store. You're
Yeah.
lost. I mean, you might as well be in the Amazon jungle. Like you have no idea where anything is, and it's a slightly stressful experience. You just got to find these habits, which is trying to put in effort to move. That's it. Just putting effort into move. And then you start to move, then you figure out what you like, and then you find, what kind of feels good at the moment. And then you start to create a routine around those habits. And then that routine and that repeated success, right, of taking those habits, applying to a routine, and then having, a couple days, maybe in a few weeks of that routine, that starts to build confidence. Not because you're feeling fit, but it's also boosting your mood. And then the most important thing is it's telling you, hey, dude, like you can actually do this.
Yeah,
Like
you
you
start
can
trusting
be
yourself, man.
exactly like you can be consistent. I can actually, make this stick. The rub there is that that's when most people try to go all in. They're like, oh well, if I
Yeah.
can do this for consistent, why not just add a few hours? And that's when you get in the trap, and that's when things come into a breaking point. So again, like you're doing a great job, being away, trying to find things to move. That was something I sucked at this last weekend when we were away at the hotel was trying to find a way to move, like because usually like we'll go just the three of us, Allie and I and Hayden, and Allie wasn't there this weekend, and so it's kind of like do I try to get up early and try to sneak out and hit up the treadmill while he's still asleep and have him wake up in a dark hotel room and everything. So it's kind of like trying to figure out. It didn't work. I tried to like walk more throughout the games before, but it just didn't work. So I want to do better at that. And next weekend is right back in the same place again. But I think just those habits of intention, again, even if it's not something that's specific to your sport, like a swim, a bike run, like a new athlete I started working with training for Ironman Wisconsin. He's been on a roll, and he just texted me yesterday. He's like, hey man, I did my swim this morning and I didn't really feel like didn't feel like running, but I wanted to go hit up, I just wanted to go lift some. So I went into, one of my old CrossFit classes. And I was like, okay. Like it's the fact that like, to me, as long as you're still engaged with getting yourself, making a better, stronger, healthier, fitter version of yourself, tweaking 5 to 10% of your training towards something that you may or may not think applies to the direct mission that is your ultimate A race for that year is still a complete net gain. Because the likelihood is if you continue to do things you don't want to do, you're going to completely avoid them altogether, or you're going to get to the point to where you don't want to do anything, period.
Yeah.
And so
No.
it's habits to routine and then competence.
Yeah, I really like that analogy about the getting fit before you go to the gym, because I think it just applies to everything. And we were kind of talking about beforehand is this information overload, and I think that's what makes it even harder, man. One of the things I listen to Goggins quite a bit here and there, but I always pull little things from him. And somebody was asking about what's the hack, And of course, he said, there is no hack. What's the hack? There's no hack. He goes, the hack is just do it. And I just think at the bottom line, that's the thing, right? I used to work in the TV news business, and I knew this guy that sort of was in my department. I've always been, well, not always, but since I've been in that business, I was a video editor. And this guy, I've never known anybody that had more knowledge about video editing. Like every time I'd say, how do I do this? And he goes, well, you just right click and then you pull that box. You know, like he knew everything about the system and everything about editing and like in an intellectual level. And then I'll never forget because one day he went out and shot some stuff, and then he came back and put together the edit for this commercial or whatever we were doing. And the dude had no clue about the nuance or actually how to make something look good in editing. He knew all the intellectually, he knew all the information, but he had no experience actually doing it. And I think that a lot of times that's what happens. You know, it's like, I'm going to start a strength program. And the next thing you know, you're like, you know, down 80 rabbit holes and there's 7,000 different ideas and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, it's one of the things I with one of my athletes, I'm like, hey, you know, just find a simple like 6-step thing. Then I sent it out this week is like, this is all I do, you know, and is it the optimum? Maybe not, but it's something, right? So like you were just saying, once you build a habit, like that's always my MO, sort of like, I try not to get trapped in what you were talking about, which is, oh, I did that today. Now I'm going to double it tomorrow or what, you know, because it's just sort of like, just do something simple for a while until you naturally just start evolving it, you know, rather than intellectually trying to optimize it with, you know, like something that's going to eventually just throw you off the rails, right? That's the whole thing is like, and it's such a, what's that thing? It keeps you away from actually doing stuff because it's like, I'll do that all the time. I'll be thinking about something, then I'll go on YouTube and I'll be like, oh, that's how you do it. Well, maybe there's some other information. Maybe you can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And the next thing you know, you're just paralyzed from doing anything because you're confused now, right? So in a way, I think that, you know, as a recommendation, I would just listen to this podcast as far as any triathlon podcast. You don't want to confuse yourself. There's plenty here to get, you know, to go off because, you know, we kind of keep it simple and real as much as we can.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, and I do like we talked about it before we went live, and I was talking about the analogy I was giving a swimmer I was working with this week, and I said, yeah, like right now, and this is just with like swimming and triathlon related content, right? Not just like the world we live in and how much information is out there. And I said, you know, like right now, like you hop online, you've got, you know, endless amounts of podcasts, you've got influencers, you've got pro triathletes, you've got social media, you've got, you know, friends that also do the sport, you know, everyone wants to give you a piece of advice, you know, print media, all these different things. It's like standing under Niagara Falls. And Niagara Falls is the information. And like, you're not like, you ain't getting hydrated. Okay. You're getting beat down and drowned. Like, and what I want to provide, you know, you or us home the summer was, you know, I just want you to kind of drink from a, you know, from a garden hose at some point, you know, like a fire hose. Like I want to give you a lot of information, but if you can't consume it, it's irrelevant. Right. And I think that's, you know, again, you said and triathletes do this all the time. They get in that trap of adding hours or adding sessions or, you know, always wanting to bump up more. And I'm like, listen, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and definitely don't try to break it. And so when you're in a habit and you're in a groove and it fits in your life, like to me, like when we start to add different things, like it's, you know, and we've always talked about this, you know, both personally and professionally, but also obviously in training is like, you know, you always want more. And sometimes we get too comfortable in like a set routine that it makes us feel like we're not doing enough. But that's actually like that perfect spot to be in, right? Where it feels like, yeah, like I felt good today and I was able to do this and I wasn't super stressed about getting in the volume. I wasn't cooked by the intensity. Like I didn't feel like I had to try too much today to like fit it all in, or I didn't feel like I had to go to bed at 7, you know, p.m. and then wake up the next day and hope that my legs worked. Like we've been sold this complete bullshit story of that you need you don't need a lot of sleep. You should work, you should grind, you should, pain is temporary, and your legend will last forever. Like all this stuff. I'm like, that's sustainable for about 36 hours until you come crumbling right back down to reality with the rest of us that have real lives and real jobs who aren't getting paid, to influence people or paying for followers. That's just ain't reality. It's not sustainable. And then you add in, a real job and people with kids, and you're like what? Like it's a lot, like it's just you got the weight of the world, you got things that pop up with friends, family, relatives, all these different things. Like you need to give yourself that buffer. And I think that like, and we talk about a lot within just like the integrity of a workout, and I do this to myself sometimes. I may or may not have done it this morning. Like I'll just like walk through this as like a smaller sample size. I was doing intervals and then as usual, I didn't know what I was going to do until I started running. I had a general idea and I was like, that last interval was probably enough. But I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, one more will make it an even number, and then I'll just kind of rattle it off. So anyway, I added one more interval in it, and I don't think it was too much. It may have been, but here's the thing: it might not have been too much, but it didn't do me any more good than what I was already doing. It just, probably tipped things over to where my enough tomorrow is going to have to be less, right? And so like when as coaches program for athletes, like you're never asking them to just completely go in completely, come out of it completely cooked. If 10 to 12 intervals can do the job, then don't give them 16. Right? You need a little bit of a buffer. That goes with life too, right? Like it's always good to add like, life is stressful and even fitting in and having like habits and a routine is stressful because I mean, let's be honest, like the majority of people, they don't have one. They don't care what they eat. They don't care how much they sleep. They treat their bodies like trash. They don't have goals. They're overweight. They're sedentary. Like it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard to have that kind of a, routine or a, belief system or something that you're passionate about if you're not hanging around those types of people. And I think that again is like, like something that we have to be very, cognizant of. And, sometimes I think about a lot, like, again, like hanging out on these hockey weekends, it's like one big drinking fest. Like that is just like the culture. And then, like I don't drink obviously. And so and I go to bed a little bit earlier than most people. But like I'm very confident in those two things that I could care less. I'm just like, no, I'll stay up and party. I'm like, no, dude, I'll see you in the morning. And then when I get up, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you're struggling with the hangover, I'm winning. But I think that we have to leave room for the errors that life is going to cause, or the extra load of stress that life is going to unload on you. So if 12 hours and like just like today, like 7 intervals would have been plenty, and giving myself an eighth interval probably didn't make me any fitter. It just may or may not have made me a little more tired. And let's say I've got a lot of stress coming up today. Now I've got less of a buffer to deal with it. Right. And maybe if that happens, like in those kind of two, like, bulls start to butt heads, well, then I'm going to wake up tomorrow like less ready and less prepared with less energy to again do the same thing and battle the day. And so like I always think it's important to keep that buffer and again going back to the additional hours, the additional stress, or want to do more, like that's your ego talking, right? That is your that's your lack of confidence talking, right? Those things, what they do is they're not setting you up for success. They're actually setting you up for failure. You need to do more. You got to go longer. You got to go harder, right? This is how you get better. Look what everybody else is doing, right? And then, first of all, like I don't even think half of it's true. I think it's all just made up, like just to make themselves look good or to kind of like troll everybody else. So like you're the one making the mistakes. Keep it within a regular range, and be just really, really, really good at it for weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months. Like that's how you get better. It's when you fall into that trap of I got to do more. When if your life is like easy peasy and things are running smooth and you're not forcing things and everything feels good and you're seeing gains, you're not overtired, you don't feel overtrained or getting good sleep. Like these are all positives that the load is right. If the load's not right, then you scale it back some. It doesn't mean, oh, well, things are going really, really good. Let me go screw things up real quick.
It's such a fine line, man. It I when you're saying that about one more interval, and then you're talking about the hockey weekends, and it's kind of like, the first thing that came to my mind too was like, just one more beer. It's kind of like those points, and I'm sure you remember those times in the evening when it was like, come on, hang around, and then it's sort of like, to me, it's like I have this thing going right now with, we didn't really like talk about. I think last year we talked about a word of the year, or whatever, our mantras and things like that, and the one thing I've been thinking about, I actually started it before the year, was this kind of like combination of words where I think about being strong, present, and aligned. And so I'm using that kind of as a baseline for stuff like that. And it really does fit, because it's sort of like, do you need one more cookie, or are you just swept up in the moment, or do you need one more interval or whatever? It's just like, it's a really big test of sort of patience with the plan that you have in your mind. It's a long term. So, I mean, we always talk about like, 30 days to a better abs or whatever. There's all these things, but man, I think that if we could sort of reshape our brain in a sense of like, hey, I'm starting this now, and I know I'm not going to even see any results for 90 days, at least, like weight loss, like that's a hard thing, trying to lose weight or trying to get fit and all this kind of stuff, man, it takes a time sometimes. I mean, we're trying to reverse patterns that we've had for like 30, 40, 50 years, and we expect them to happen. And I'm like this too, is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try that new supplement, and it's like, if it doesn't work in 2 days, I'm like, well, I guess this thing doesn't work. And it's like, I remember that with my dad. I just told a story, but like, he had this real, like, at the end, he was kind of itching a lot. And I think I told this before, but it was funny because I was really into apple cider vinegar, and I still am. It's like a alkaline, neutralizing kind of force in your body. But I said, Dad, you're itching. I think you could get, some benefit from doing this apple cider vinegar. So he goes, yeah, all right, man. We went out and he did a shot, and he goes, oh, I can get into that. It reminds me of scotch, because he quit drinking for 30, 40 years. And
Mhm.
he was like, oh, this would be a nice supplement or whatever. So he took it, and he's like, yeah, ooh, that was brutal. And then he went back in the living room for, I'm not kidding you, like 5 minutes. He called me. He's like, Mike, come in here. I was like, what? And he goes, it doesn't work. It's like, Dad, it's 5 minutes. And so he just gave it up. But, like, I think that so many of us kind of have that in us, and it applies to everything. Whatever you want to do, I want to go on this path, right? And I'm always talking about the path, or like following something consistently. And it's been a huge struggle for me. So that's why I've been trying to do something recently, for the last month and a half, just easy shit, just to build what you're saying earlier about a pattern, a habit, and building confidence and trust in yourself that you can actually stick with something. And it's just confusing because I obviously have stuck with doing Ironman every year. So it's there, and I can always sort of like flip a switch or whatever, but it's kind of like we were talking about, it's always like I'm building, rickety floors on top of a rickety foundation, and it just kind of works, but it's not long lasting. So I just think this is a very important point, that especially for a lot of people that maybe have been in triathlon at one point and had success, and then just sort of fallen away from it for a few years, and they come back and they expect to be sort of right back to where they were. You always reference the high school track star that thinks they're a great runner 40 years later, but they haven't done any running. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, yeah, you got it in you, but it's going to take a while to rebuild. And it's just, it really is like the anti-hack philosophy of just giving yourself time to let it unfold and really believe in it. Because, the interest, you've heard this concept of sort of like, just get a little bit better each day, right? Or 1% better. You've heard that. What's so funny about that is, though, it's a great philosophy and it definitely works, but you can never see it.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. You just have to have blind faith in what you're doing and believe in the methods and the practice and the long terms. Because I just think that's like such a interesting and potent point, is that you can never see that 1% because it's just sort of happening in the background. But it's like
It's
there's
like
no contrast.
yeah, I mean, it's like if you're doing it yourself, you won't. I mean, to me, it's like that's the appropriately paced weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see it,
Yeah.
right? You don't see it, but then you go see somebody or you run into somebody you haven't seen in like 2 or 3 weeks, and like, dang, you look like have you lost some weight? And you're like, I don't know, like I guess. Like you don't see it because it happens so slowly, and you see it every single day. So like there is no drastic change. And I think that's where we get into troubles. Like we expect these drastic changes. And I think that's also not just with like how fitness is, but I generally think like it's not, you hear people say all the time, like I struggle to be consistent, or I struggle to do this, or I struggle with that. And yeah, sure. Everybody can struggle with that for periods of time. But I think at the core of it and at the root of the problem is that it's not your inability to be consistent, right? It is your inability to set realistic standard goals that progress over time.
Mm.
Like your biggest issue is that you try to hit a home run with every swing. You try to do the most because that's going to give you self-validation. That's going to make you feel good. You're going to match what somebody else is doing, even though they don't even know you exist, right? All these things that are irrelevant, and you're shooting way over your availability and way over your allotted stress time. Like that is what breeds inconsistency. It's not you. It's not your like just it's not just like who you are as an individual, because everybody has like these one things that we are consistent with that we never break from. So you can't be a consistent, hardworking, see it through person in like one area of your life and not in another. It just so happens that that one area of life that you're super consistent with, right, is attainable and reasonable, right? And something that you feel rooted and passionate about. Like I see it all the time too. Like people sign up for these races, but they don't even want to do, but they feel like they have to sign up for them.
Yeah.
And like, so there is no like, yes, like, are you going to wake up, seeing sunshine and rainbows every day, pumped, ready for your, 55-second, Instagram reel, blessing the universe and how great it is to be alive, and, sipping on your kombucha and, shooting stars. Like, no, it ain't gonna be like that every day. Some days you're gonna get out of bed and you're like, God, do you not want to do this? And some days you might not. But other days, what might get you going and out the door is like, yeah, man, but I really feel convicted. Like I really want to do well at this event. Like this is meaningful to me in all these certain ways. And that's what gets you going. And so like if you're looking at a race counter, you're picking out a race and you're doing things just because, that ain't going to cut it. Like you're already asking yourself to not be inconsistent because there's no, you're already going to be able to have less drive for something that you're. So, I mean, we see it all the time as coaches, right? Like people do their first Ironman and they are all in.
Yep.
They don't miss. They're consistent. They're all in. They're doing all the right things. Year after that, they have another one. They're like, first of all, they're like, yeah, that wasn't that bad. Like, in this, they don't train as much, but they're like, yeah, I just don't have like that healthy respect, that healthy respect or that fear for the distance. And they end up having a bad year, not just because they don't have the ability to be consistent. It's just like they're the why, the drive, the motivation, it just isn't there. And here's the deal, dude. It's like that is okay. It is okay to not have a drive or motivation to something. The most important thing is for you to pivot and find what is meaningful to you, because that's what you're going to be the most consistent with, right? And it could be. And here's the thing, right? It doesn't have to be race related. It can just be like it's something I tell Hayden all the time. We're like wrestling on the couch, and I'm like, dude, you got a while. Like he is, I mean, I don't know how much longer I got, honestly, but I'm like, because he's getting pretty stout. I'm like, I want to be able to like be as fit and as strong as I possibly can to battle with him for as long as I can. And that is meaningful to me. Like I want to be able to do that. I want to be, super, super active, in his life as he gets older. And as he, if he has kids one day, like I want to be, how my mom is with him, and active and doing things and always on the go. Like I don't want to have to be sitting in a chair or be prevented from having experiences with my grandkids or something else because I just didn't take care of myself. Like to me, those are pretty easy things to hopefully get out the door with. Like races, like they're going to come and go. Motivation is going to come and go. You're going to have these things And I think, like, again, going back to something we've always kind of harped on, especially the last few years, is just feeling like an athlete. I just want to be an athlete. I don't take care of myself. I want to be fit. Like, to me, those are should be non-negotiables for everybody, but they're not. But it's what happens is when we pigeonhole ourselves into a specific category, and then we raise expectations that break through that ceiling of reality of what we can actually handle and what our stress should be, and then we don't meet either. Because one, we don't even like the category that we're in. And then we think that category has to be so specific and narrow focused that anything outside of it isn't doing the goodwill or the good work of what this goal is. But that's not true. There are plenty of accessory and complementary things we can do in all kinds of aspects of life, right? That help boost your mood, that help boost your overall mental health, that boost your emotional health, that aren't directly tied to, a run, a ride, or a swim. I mean, you can't tell me that, the motivation level and the energy level and the drive and the positivity difference from getting off a 1 hour work call that you're miserable on, scrolling through your phone on social media, listening some, meeting that you hate being on. When you're done with that call, you don't want to run. You might want to run through a wall, but you don't want to go out for a run. You're not like chomping at the bit. You're not cheery. You take that and you take like, oh, well, I just had coffee with a friend of mine. It was just like so good. We talked to all so many things. I just left energized. Then you want to run. Like you feel good. And like, so there's so many things that can have this cascading positive effect to all areas of our lives, but we try to just pigeonhole everything we do into a specific category. Well, if it's not going to be good for Ironman Arizona, then I shall not do it. And then at some point you become disengaged, or then you expect and want and add more to what you're already doing. And that's when you become inconsistent. I asked an athlete straight up the other day, I was like, I did my bike and I hate it just as much as I used to. And I said, well, then why don't we just take them away? Like, last I checked, no one's holding a gun to your head on the stationary bike or on your trainer. He's like, well, but I got to do it for the race I want to do. I'm like, it doesn't sound like you want to do it because there's biking involved. And so like when you're looking at your week and you're looking at your year, like choose these things that like will lower overall stress and make you feel good, because that's when you can actually maintain the habits that you want to have, that builds the consistency and the routines that you want to have, that gives you confidence. Like, stop setting yourself up for failure, right? Like, I don't know many coaches or really, they're like, hey, you need to race more this year, right? That just adds stress to so many people's lives. Like, if I'll talk to you, I was like, hey man, I know you're probably gonna do Ironman Wisconsin here, but I want you to weave in 370.3s. You'd be like, go fuck yourself. you're like, I'm not doing that. Like, there's no way, because I could feel your blood pressure and like stress level rise, and you'd be like, I can't do that. Like, that's just not who I am. So like, you gotta meet yourself where you are, and that's how you get to where you want to go. You meet yourself where you want to be, because that's how you never get to where you want to go, because it seems too unattainable, and you don't have the ability, the bandwidth, and the energy to be consistent at it for long enough to eventually get there.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I mean, what you're saying about Hayden and your being, finding something meaningful. I think I was last time before the cast, we talked about, one thing that's been interesting to me is sort of redefining your why. And I think, we've talked about that over and over many times, but I do think it's important, because like when you said, a lot of times what's meaningful is, doing the race or whatever. And I've just gotten to a point, man, where it's meaningful to me to do that race because I like it. And I want to look forward to it, and I want to enjoy the experience, because it's a really challenging day, and I've done it, and I don't know, I look forward to it. But like, what is meaningful to me is really this creating a consistency and just, sort of staying on a path. I feel like I've been personally kind of a guy that is, back in school, even how, I've been, like, go to the union and cram for your finals instead of like just being consistent with it, and I don't know why that is. It's sort of this, maybe it's just growing up in an alcoholic family, because it sort of has this, we became drawn to excitement and chaos. And it's sort of like being consistent isn't chaos. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, it's unsettling in a way if you're always looking for something to stir the pot and, find something that's going to be like a dopamine, like a fire hose flood of dopamine. That's the kind of shit that we get in the habit of. And that's what, when I was talking about this information overload, it's like never enough. You just go down these rabbit holes of Instagram or Twitter or whatever, YouTube, and it just never seems to fill the cup. So, it's kind of back to that Empty Your Cup podcast that we had a little while ago. It's like time to get rid of some of that crap so you can put in more of what you're looking for, more of what's meaningful, and then sort of just trust in the process. And that's where I'm at. And that's the, part of that being present thing that I've been working on. And, it's easy just to say that stuff, and it's easy to say, yep, I'm going to be consistent. It's just but the action is really where it's at. And to not, because it's so easy to get trapped in this like thing, okay, I'm doing Ironman Wisconsin in how many, 30 some weeks or whatever. And I'm, for me to go, oh, I want to do this. And instead it's not where I'm at. You know what I mean? That's way out there. It's like living in the future, on exponentials. It's kind of crazy to always be thinking about that. And that's exactly what you said it, that first time I did it, I really kind of said something to my athletes about this. I remember that first time, and I was driven by fear. I was driven by the unknown, and it was like this push that, can I do this? And I had no idea, and I was afraid of it. And that drove a consistency that actually paid off. But after you do it, like you said, you kind of like, well, that fear of the unknown is gone. I know I can do this. And then the next step is sort of like, well, what's the least amount I can do to actually do it? And I kind of have that, but, and it's sort of like when you talk about, I'd rather have an undertrained athlete than an overtrained athlete. And it's so true because, especially if that undertrained athlete is fairly consistent, but not maybe doing, crazy stuff all the time, because that crazy stuff is what leads to the inconsistency, in my opinion. But yeah, it's like you got, some crazy thing to do and, you can do it. But it's weird to even think about just trusting the little things along the way. It's almost like you need to have epic proof, before you can do something epic or whatever you want to say, but yeah, for me, it's all about finding something meaningful. And that usually should not involve some kind of time at a race or something like that, because it's just, a house of cards, man. It's not like real. It's something that really gets you out of bed every day. And how long can, a time for an Ironman, for 12 years that I've been doing them, that doesn't, like drive me. I mean, I try to think it does sometimes, but it doesn't. That's not really what I want, because then you go and then you don't get it. And then what?
It's like, yeah, I mean, it's like, not only do we, it's great to have goals, but like, it's like, the things that we do to set ourselves up for failure, right? On things that could be taken away, or that the likelihood is so small that we will reach, and that we make that like our only goal for the year.
Right.
And like, because like, no matter how great your year is, no matter how fit you are, no matter how consistent you are, to make like your A race, like your one goal or your two goals, of the year. And then if you fall short, then what's the net gain of the year? Is it a loss or is it a gain? And most tries to be like, oh, it's like, I got a PR on my race. I'm like, that's a heavy cross to bear. Like, because it could be completely like out of your hands, right? You have your best year possible. You wake up on race day and you just feel like trash, or you get sick, or you get injured the week before, or you can't even, till the start line because something else happens, or, it's a torrential downpour and 42 degrees, like, or it's 110 degrees. Like, all these things can happen and like pop up. And I think that, like, again, like, yes, those things will end, the likelihood of you being successful is increased when I think we have these like small wins or micro goals, we talked about before on one of our podcasts, and playing small ball. Like, that's that's how you get your way around the bases. Like that's how you're more likely to make contact every time. It's not swinging for home runs every single time, right? And then you're gonna go 0 for 4 one game, and you're gonna be like, and now you're gonna feel one like you don't want to play anymore because it sucked, right? Walking back to the dugout every single time, swinging for a home run, even though you know you shouldn't, but you did anyway, and you're letting your team down, which is you. And so you're not going to play anymore, or you're going to have the next time you're going to have to you're going to feel like you want to have to try even harder, right? And like we see it all the time in professional sports, like people are in like such a slump, it's so hard to break, right? It's so really hard for them to break because the pressure continues to build, and that's why it's so incredible to see like on the positive side, these teams or specific athletes with these certain current streaks or records, like they don't even think about, most of them probably, like, they don't even think about the record. They just think about doing their job and doing it every day. And they love it. And it just kind of happens. And if the streak doesn't maintain, like they could care less. Like that's just part of who they are and what they do. And so like to find ways in your training to, I think, elevate the opportunities that you have to feel wins and to gain momentum and to have these habits that turn into routines that then breed and make you have more confidence. Like to me, like those things you should worry about, not the end goal, not where your watts are today or why they aren't where you want them to be next week, or your pace or your swim, your pace per yard. Like these are things that will materialize, like you said, and happen over time. Like that's not going to happen overnight. Right? Like you're not going to feel the effects from apple cider vinegar, in 5 minutes. You're not going to feel the benefits from, your 25, 30, 40 minute, aerobic runs this week. You'll feel them next week and the week before, right? Not in some gigantic pace change, but you'll feel better than, you did the week before. You'll feel more energized. You're adapting to the load, and maybe you travel a little bit farther distance. Like they add up over time. And like it's funny, right? Because you ask athletes, or they'll even mention to you after races, like, God, I had no idea how I was able to do that. And I was like, well, if you look back in your training, you just like put in a lot of work
Hmm.
and you were consistent, right? And you never had these periods of injury or downtime or lack of motivation or negativity, like all these things that can get in your way. Like you just didn't have those. And so when you do that and you aren't obsessed with the end goal, because all it does is cause friction and letdowns, like this is why you end up where you end up. And so stop trying to work your way backwards from it, from like, hey, why am, how much farther in, it's for once January, like this is the time to, again, it's not, yeah, we're in the second week, like, but it's still perfect time. You're still early, pre-gaming it for establishing patterns and habits that are going to work. Not just work for you right now, but work for you in May. Work for you in September. Work for you year round. Yes, they might have to pivot. Yes, you might have to, go up or go down on them sometimes, depending on what's life is throwing at you, or depending on how close you are to a race. But telling you, it's just stacking them and make it attainable. And because the more you make it unattainable and you go too high and you go too hard, you're man, you're threading the needle with and it might not end up going very well for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like we see it all the time, right? A lot of people will, have that goal in mind and talk about it and be ready and think they're going to go into that race and crush it. I just always think back to this because that first Ironman I ever did, I was like I said, I didn't know. was unknown. I'd never been there or whatever. And you talk about home runs or swinging for the fence and stuff like that. And I just got to that. I'll never forget, man, that morning I was so nervous about that race. And then that morning I just was calm. I was like super calm. And I called it walking the plank. I knew it was just here, and that's where I was. And then once it started, that's when I started swinging for the fence a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm in it now. It's like you can prematurely kind of predict yourself all year, but you have to kind of be where you're at and then just be in it. And then I think, because how many times we've seen, like you just said, I had no idea I could do that or whatever. It's just like it's a quiet confidence.
Mm.
It's knowing that you've done all the work, and then and I do think it's important to see certain things certain days and recognize them and like lock them in, because certain training days, you probably will be like, okay, I have potential to do this or something, great or whatever. And those things kind of pop up here and there, but most of the times they're not really there. But if you're seeing, like, you're always amped and hyped on them and think your every day is like going to have to be a crusher, then I think that's just too much to handle. You have to kind of be a level, steady, consistent person throughout training and just see the moments that give you that glimpse of what could happen.
In that, I mean, again, like we've talked about it, about just like striking the match, but you can't lie at it all the time, nor should you expect to.
Right.
And so, like when you look at your week and you look at next week or the things that you want to start to like build again, like right now you're just building. I mean, right now you might just be trying to pick out the lot you want, right? It's like, so don't go pick out a lot on the side of a mountain. It's going to be hard to build off of. If you need, unless you got like a lot of experience, building houses on the side of, the side of mountains, like don't do that. Find some perfectly flat farmland, with a great foundation and build something, pretty simple on it. Don't go for, a side of the mountain freaking, aspen-like cabin, on 4 stilts that 9 stories tall. You're asking yourself to fail. You're asking yourself to not succeed. Probably going to struggle with permits down the road. I mean, just right now, just pick out the right lot, and then slowly build. All the boring things, like you don't build a house and then it's ready the next day. And there might be times where you pull up on the driveway and you're like, "Ugh, man, are we on schedule?" Like I thought the siding and the roughing is supposed to be in by now. And you're like, no, just hang tight. And then other times you might roll up, on your fitness house. You might be like, man, I think we might be moving in early. Just you're far away. I mean, if you got early season race, obviously, like, you may have a little more, pressure, and urgency behind things, which is fine. But also you got to remember, this is the first race of the year. And unless you're planning on retiring and hanging it up in March, April, or May, then you gotta understand, like, this is still all part of the process. You can't jump steps, and you don't want to add too much, because then again, like, you're going to go all in and you may have a good race or a not good race, but it's like, what can I do the whole rest of the year? And I think that's just something you're going to have to be, really mindful of when it comes to, each week and how that, complements each next week, and then how that's going to stack your months together.
Yeah. And it's like not always exciting, and you've talked about athletes. You get up and you kind of ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? And then I think a powerful place to get at is this, because this is what I do. This is what I do every day.
Yeah.
I don't know why all the time, but this is just what I do, because it's just something that I know in the long run, when it stacks up on top of each other, it's going to be a good outcome.
I like that. Well,
all right, dude. Well,
it was enough for today.
Yeah, we can't be information overload.
Seriously, definitely can't do that. Well, as always, listen, we love you guys, and we do appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop of all things camps and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available, Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. Good luck with that haircut.
Thanks, dude. Hope I don't have much left to give, so hopefully I don't take it all.
Get a high fade.
It's always good with the high fade, man. Always.
All right, man. I'll catch you later.
All right, dude. All right, man. See you, dude.